first that she could put up with me is kind of like a miracle. And
She's
then,
very patient.
yeah, oh yeah, but she can be very impatient too. She's like me. She's human.
Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hi, David. And welcome to our listeners around the country, around the world, and throughout the galaxy. This is the Feeling Good podcast. So welcome, everyone. And hi, David.
Hi.
Today we're
I'm
doing
looking forward to today's podcast. It's going to be a fun one, maybe.
I am looking forward to it, too. I'm really excited about it. It's an Ask David, but it's an Ask David about David so that all of your listeners can get to know you better.
Yeah,
And
fun.
we got a bunch of questions from somebody in our Wednesday group, Stan. I don't know if he wants me to say his last name, Stan Dickens. I said it anyway. And Stan is also a beloved member of the Team UK, Team in United Kingdom group. So I think it's a really great idea to ask you questions to get to know you. And I thought I'd start with a really simple endorsement that just speaks to the heart of TEAM-CBT. And I don't know if she wants me to say her first name, so I'm going to say that her name is Gertie. And she wrote, "Hello, Rhonda and Dr. Burns. I just want to say thank you again. I am going through a difficult time waiting for medical tests. And while I'm waiting, I'm listening to Dr. Burns on anxiety. I hope you know how much help you're giving me every day. Thank you so much, Gertie."
Well, thank you so much for that kind comment. And you say you're waiting for some medical tests there, so my heart goes out to you if you're struggling with some health issues. I'm sad to hear that. I would say there's been so much of that touching me or the people that I know of recently. So my heart is with you, and also grateful for your kind comment.
Yeah. Okay, so ready to get to know David?
I'm ready. Sakatumi, this fellow sent a list of very personal questions, 26 of them. We probably won't get through more than 2 or 3 or 6 or 8 of them. But I haven't read any of them except for the first few. So these will be true, spontaneous reactions of the real David.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start off with the big one. David, if you hadn't dedicated your life to cognitive behavioral therapy or mental health or psychiatry or authored Feeling Good or any of the other 5 or 6 books you've written, what would you have done instead with your life?
Well, I think what happened is, and I've told this story before, so I'll make it real short. But I was a philosophy major in college at Amherst. I had roommates who were so much smarter than I was, brilliant, and 2 of them went into physics major, and I did take a couple physics courses and really loved them. But I figured I wasn't smart enough to be a physics major, so I majored in philosophy. And I had a real aptitude for philosophy. And if I hadn't been kind of directed by a supervisor to go to medical school and become a psychiatrist, I was headed for a career in, a graduate school in philosophy. But when I read Wittgenstein, my senior year at Amherst College, he was arguably the greatest philosopher of all time. And he solved, to my satisfaction, all the problems of philosophy. So to me, that counseling people was was second best. My dad thought I would be a minister. He was a minister. And when I was growing up, I always thought I'd be a minister. But as I, got a little older and got into college and whatnot, I began to question things. In addition, have been somewhat offended by what I see as a lot of lack of true love within, Christian religion and all religions. And as well, people who aren't religious seem to get more focused on power and hatred and, feeling superior to other human beings. And that kind of turned me off to that. But I think, Rhonda, you remember that uh, episode on the podcast where he talked about that experience I had in the Nevada desert, which
I
is
do.
a kind
Yeah.
of a mystical experience. And one of the messages that came to me at that time is when you get older, people will be ready to hear your message. And so I'm getting pretty old now. I'm 82, so I might start, preaching my gospel finally now at this point in my life. But I think my life always would have been around something around religion or spirituality or philosophy or psychotherapy or something in that whole whole area, because I think that's what I had a great aptitude for. Um, and so I'm really grateful at the direction that my life has gone into, because it's been focused on fast, effective psychotherapy. But
Hmm.
to my way of thinking, there's a lot of spirituality and philosophy embedded in psychotherapy, and especially cognitive therapy and the new team therapy. So I'm kind of happy as a pig in poop, you might say. And I probably am in a lot of poop because a lot of people don't take me too seriously or like my work. But I'm very grateful to have the kind of life I have right now, where I can both help people with practical problems of anxiety, depression, anger, and help them change, often, in fact, almost always within a single 2-hour therapy session. But at the same time, I get to dip into the more, Buddhist or spiritual or whatever dimension, philosophical dimension of life, which I think is very, very important, particularly these days when we're seeing the world degenerate rapidly into hatred, chaos, and aggression, as it does from time to time. But the weapons get stronger, and the weapons always get used eventually. And so that's what makes this particular time frightening to me.
Is there a common misconception about you or your work that you'd like to clear up?
Let's see. There are just so many of them, and I try to clear them up. But people who want to not understand your message will, go ahead and think about things the way they want to. Because, and it's kind of my fault, I guess, because I put things in a purposely controversial light because I want to shock people and make them think. But in general, I think the whole field of psychotherapy is a complete mess, and that we need to start all over and start from scratch, which I've said many times, with a science-based, data-driven form of psychotherapy, where people measure things at the start and end of every single therapy session, and and therapists are accountable, and patients are accountable. But people who feel threatened by my work love to cast it into a kind of a absurd light. Uh, for example, uh, I I often tell this story. People don't really believe that thoughts cause feelings. A lot of people don't. Most people do, or many people do, but many people don't, and they get very angry about this idea because they think that feelings cause thoughts, or they have some other theory from the simple idea that Epictetus proposed 1700 years ago, that thoughts cause feelings. And so one of the stories I tell to convince people of this, because people give the example well, if you were caught on a train track and a train was coming, you'd feel panicked and you wouldn't have to put a thought in your mind. And then people think that's so convincing. That's so convincing. Well, I tell this story, and I know you've heard it, Rhonda, and a lot of people have heard it. So I won't tell it all, but essentially, I saved a man who was trapped on a railroad with a train coming. But he was he was demented. He was confused about where he was at, and I got his car mainly off the railroad track, but he was still hit by the train at going 70 miles an hour. But he survived because it hit his car so fast it kind of cut the car in half, and and but he was unharmed.
Wow.
But when I finally rushed up to him, the train came screeching to a halt, and the conductors came running to see if there was a dead body in this half of the car, the front half. But he was unharmed, and I told him, "You just got hit by a train," and he said, "I have not." And I said, "You have. Why do you think all the windows of your car are smashed? And what do you think happened to the back half of your car? Where is it?" And he looked around, he saw the back half of his car was missing, all his windows were smashed. And he said, "You might be right. Where is this train?" I said, "They're right. It's right there. It's 20 feet from here. Look, that's the train. That's the conductor. They're rushing up here to see what's happening." And then he smiled and he said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Do you think I can sue?" So he was all happy because he'd been hit by a train. And I said, "No, you'll be lucky if they don't sue you. You were driving on the railroad track." And that was the story. And I told it. And the idea is simply because he had dementia, he didn't have the perception, "I'm about to be hit by a train," so he had no fear. I had the perception, "My God, this guy is about to be killed." And I was in a taxi at the time when I saw this happening. I stopped the taxi driver and said, "I've got to get out and get that guy off the railroad because there's a train coming. It's about a mile and a half, from here, but they go at high speed, and we just have a matter of seconds to save this guy's life." But so I told that story, and most people think, "Gosh, that's cool. That's interesting. Maybe you do have to have a thought to have an emotion." But I just got a nasty email from some fellow, and it was kind of like, Dr. Burns is so stupid because the moral of the story is we're supposed to be happy all the time, even if we're about to get hit by a train. And I say, "Give me an effing break, you." I won't go into name calling, but I
No
would be
labeling.
very tempted to,
Mhm.
because it's a stupid comment. It wasn't the point of the story at all.
And you've
I've
never
always
said
felt
that.
no, and the point was that my anxiety saved his life. It wouldn't be appropriate to be happy when you're about to be hit by a train.
Right.
And but there's a lot of that mean-spirited stuff. But I assume accountability for a lot of it because I kind of intentionally say things to shock people. But that's because I think the field needs to be shocked.
Mhm.
And when I say people can recover rapidly, and to my way of thinking, I have videos coming out on this. I'm sure this will enrage some people too. And my position is not only can people recover rapidly in a flash, like in a matter of 15 to 30 seconds. That's how long it takes to recover from years or decades of severe depression and anxiety. Well, what does that mean? Well, what I'm saying is the moment of change is an aha experience where the patient has suddenly seen something they hadn't seen before.
Mhm.
They've been all involved in these distorted thoughts that create suicidal urges, feelings of worthlessness, feelings of hopelessness and despair, and feelings of defectiveness, and so forth. And to me, it's exciting that recovery can happen like that in a flash. And then you've got to do relapse prevention training and things like that. But to me, it's a huge breakthrough, and you have to believe it's possible. And you have to be measuring things at every session to learn how to do it. And that's what I call TEAM-CBT. But a lot of people don't like that message, for example, and so they get mad at me. Uh, and so then they, I think, intentionally or subconsciously, they want to think of me as a kind of stupid jerk, so they don't have to feel threatened by what I'm saying. But I do want them to feel threatened by what I'm saying, because I think our field needs a revolutionary change, and that there's a lot of garbage in our field.
Yeah.
That and people are getting away with crap and garbage. And just I think the quality of psychotherapy in the United States and probably worldwide sucks for the most part. And I know there's a lot of very committed and loving people who want to help others. But I think the training and the understanding of how to do that is just about as horrible as can be. And so, yes, I think there's a lot of misconception about me and my work and the conclusions that I've come to. And it would to clear them all up would take a 3-hour podcast. But I think that's such a great question. I have strong feelings about it, and I get pissed off at people. But in the last analysis, I could be a lot sweeter and warmer to people and tell everybody that they're wonderful. And most of the time, I do that, even when I don't necessarily think that. And that's a good way to sell your message. But I have an ornery side, and I kind of like putting it up in people's face and confronting people. And I plead guilty as accused if someone wants to accuse me of that.
One misconception that I came up with a colleague who's not a TEAM-CBT therapist, and she said, "Oh, no, I don't like CBT. I don't like cognitive behavioral therapy because there are no emotions involved, and I'm a therapist that goes deep into emotion."
Oh, yeah. That's another misconception. And I've never come out against emotions, and we even measure at the end of every session. That we do tremendous training in our Tuesday group to show therapists how to acknowledge emotions. And I would say the only therapists who can't acknowledge emotions are those who claim they're good at it. So I say, screw you, babe. So many people think that they are dealing with emotions when they absolutely have no skill at it at all. And that's one of the first things that people discover when they come to our free Tuesday training group at Stanford on psychotherapy training. And if you think you're great at emotions, come and visit us, and we'll give you some drills in emotions, the 5 secrets drill, and see how you do when confronted by an angry patient, how well you acknowledge their emotions. Are you willing to discover that your empathy skills are not good, or do you just prefer imagining that you do? Because I've got a scale where you can measure after have patients rate you after every session on how good you are at understanding and acknowledging their emotions, and letting those emotions flow, and showing the patient that you understand how they're thinking and feeling, and acknowledging those feelings. You'll discover, all of those of you who think you're so good at emotions, that you'll probably will get a failing grade on emotions from every patient at every session. I have a really sensitive empathy scale. And so I'd say stop throwing spitballs and start measuring what you do, and learn some humility, or learn and come and learn.
Yeah.
And I'm probably the most at fault, at everyone is pointing the finger of blame at others. But our whole field is based on, our school of therapy is better than your school of therapy. And what I want to say loud and clear is that's not true. What is true is you all suck. Your theories aren't valid and your techniques are no better than placebo. And the only thing striking about you is your arrogance. How is that the real David? Is this what?
Yes. I would like to say that is the real David. I confirm that.
Yeah.
David, if you let me ask you another question. These are not like the easy peasy, let's get to know David, but this is interesting. So if you could give your younger self just one piece of advice, what would that be?
Well, I don't know. For me, just life has been an ongoing learning thing, and I'm learning, all the time, and I make mistakes all the time, and have to learn from them, and and um, some of the biggest things I've discovered along the way, like the disarming technique and the death of the self, and but but those aren't pieces of advice I would give to my younger self. And to tell you the truth, one of the first things I learned in psychotherapy that stuck with me even long before I learned the really good stuff, even when I was a beginner, was advice giving is not a part of psychotherapy, and it's not a smart thing to do. And
It's so annoying.
and so I wouldn't give myself a piece of advice, but I might get to know my younger self and say, what you're doing is kind of kick ass, and you've taken a lot of radical chances with your life, and you've pursued your own path, which has been so different from what other people. But I love you, David, and I wouldn't have you do anything any differently. And I hope you can, even though you're about 2 feet from the grave these days, I hope you can keep plugging along and keep shocking people and keep discovering things, because I feel like I'm 16 years old, and every day I get exciting insights. I learn things about statistics, about human beings, about feelings, about how things work. And I just think we're also lucky to be alive. And I just hope that the us humans don't ruin everything, on the surface of the earth soon. Uh, my wife is of the opinion that the human race probably does not have a prognosis of survival that's very likely at this point. And she and I both feel that that might not be such a big loss. But what we grieve for would be the animals who were already, killing and exploiting, uh, and
Dying
that's
off.
our greatest sadness, that uh, the the human race is endangered by the darker self, the hating self right now.
Well, David, do you have a belief or an idea that has changed for you over time? Something that you used to be certain about, but now you see differently, or something that you really believe deeply in that you no longer believe in?
Yeah, I probably can't give any examples of that, but that's been kind of the story of my life. And the thing that's helped me a lot with that is, the statistical modeling I do. Even to this day, I probably create and test hypotheses. I have this sophisticated statistics system that I learned. I was grateful to be given the chance to audit a class from James Arbuckle at Temple University in Philadelphia when I was in private practice, but I went and took his 3 hour once a week class on structural equation modeling, and I took it 2 years in a row. And he was a great teacher and a wonderful person, and I just learned kick-ass statistical modeling techniques, and now I get all this data from our Feeling Great app that I can model and learn how people actually change. I think it's really breakthrough research, and it's fun. And the one thing that I've learned in doing it, you see, what you do, you put a database into your computer, into a statistics program, and then you translate your thinking about how things work into a picture, and it's a form of pictorial mathematics. It's a highly sophisticated form of mathematics, but Arbuckle prove that certain kinds of mathematics you can transform into pictures, and they don't look like equations, but they are equations, but they represent your thinking. And so it's really easy to create these ways to test your hypotheses precisely. And one thing the computer has taught me with the structural modeling is that almost all of my ideas are incorrect almost all the time.
Wow.
And I've come to love that. It was threatening to me at first because I was just getting shot down. I'd put in some fantastic model with fabulous data, and then it would analyze it in a flash. It used to take all night for it to do these calculations, but now it can do them in a flash, like in a couple of seconds. And then it says, David, the good news is that your theory totally sucks. The data proves that your theory, your model, cannot be correct. And the even better news is keep at it, and eventually I'll reveal to you why your thinking is off and how you can change it. And that's been the adventure of my life. And I do that, I would say, at least 5 days a week for an hour or two. And it's just been exciting for me to give up the ego that where you think you're supposed to know something and be willing to follow the data to discover the new world, the new adventure. And you can call that also the great death. That's what Buddha called it, 2,500 years ago, the great death of the self. And a lot of that has to do with letting go of your idea that the way you see things has to be right, or it's your property, or your identity is, you have some kind of identity or self that you have to be protecting.
Well, let's get more personal. So, David, how did you meet your
Okay.
wife? How did you meet your wife, Melanie, and what do you love most about her?
Let's see, where are we now? Fun and unusual questions. Well, there's so many things that I love about Melanie, and she is first, that she could put up with me is kind of like a miracle, and
She's
then
patient.
yeah, oh yeah, and but she can be very impatient too. She's like me. She's human, but she is so loving and kind, and has been such a wonderful mother to our children and to our cats. And she is uh, so so smart. She's the brains in our family, and she when I met her, she was just, kind of had done high school, and that was about it.
Mm.
And I offered her a ride on my motorcycle, and she accepted, and
Is
we've
that how
been
you met?
traveling on that motorcycle ever since. And she was the one to decide it's time to start having children, and she was willing. I mean, I was a pretty wild, crazy guy when I was young, and I was just lucky she was willing to go on this adventure with me. And I tell her several times every day how much I love her and appreciate her, and she's so kind and loving, and but she's also wise and kind of looks out for me too, because I'm prone to making all kinds of mistakes all the time. And when I
And
when
one
I
thing I've
listen
noticed
to
about her
her,
is she's
I
very
I,
witty.
I avoid some of those mistakes. Yeah, back
But
to
one
you.
thing I know about Melanie is that she's very witty and funny. She's fun to hang out with.
Yeah, yeah. We do a lot of laughing, but these days it's more concern and sadness and anxiety because of the political situation. She's taken it very hard. She saw this coming before anyone, even in the like around 2015 and 2016, and she suddenly saw what direction things were going politically in our country, and and she's in a state of mourning pretty much on a daily basis. And I feel much the same way.
So was she just walking down the street and you pulled over on your motorcycle and offer a ride, or were you guys in a restaurant, or how did you
Well,
happen
there
to
was this place, we were hippies in those days, and I was a medical student. I was, cutting classes and just hanging out and trying to learn to be a hippie and learn to learn to learn about life on the streets of Palo Alto. They weren't teaching much in medical school about humans or things I'd need for psychotherapy to treat people. I had to learn that myself for the most part. And so there was this place in downtown Palo Alto, and it was run by the Mid Peninsula Free University, which Rob Christ started. It was just a place, a kind of a coffee house where you could go and hang out, and so we used to go and hang out in there sometimes, and I was thought it'd be nice to find someone to, kind of hang out with today. And I was just standing there. I guess I was dressed kind of outrageously in some flashy purple shirt or something like that and cowboy boots and trying to be cool, I guess. And some girl walked past me. Forgive the term, but that was the term we used. A girl walked by and I said, "Would you like a ride on my motorcycle?" And she wasn't interested. And then Melanie apparently saw that, thought she would walk by, and I asked her, "Would you like a ride on my motorcycle?" And she said she'd love one.
Oh, neat.
And then we went on a motorcycle ride, and we've been riding ever since.
That's neat. Nice.
But one of the things she's the most incredibly thoughtful person. Uh, she senses what people need and tries to provide that, and I'm a lucky guy.
I can hear how much you love her and everything you're saying. Well, which band do you like better, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
Oh, I'm glad we're finally going up to the fun ones at the top of the list. Yes. Well, I much preferred the Beatles. The Rolling Stones were a little too hardcore for my then naive younger self. But I just loved the Beatles, and I've always loved the British people too, and the whole country, the whole culture. However, I must admit that I saw on YouTube, like who's the main guy from the Rolling Stones?
Mick
They had
Jagger?
Pete Jagger in a
Mick Jagger.
nightclub that he walked into with his buddies, and I think it was Muddy Waters, if I have the guy right. You might know better. He's like this guitarist, this black blues guitarist who's just fantastic. And he was singing the song, "Baby, Please Don't Go. Don't go down to, New Orleans or, something, whatever." It's just a real earthy song. And then and when Jagger walked in, he says, "Oh, there's Mike Jagger just came in. That's Mike Jagger." And then Jagger got up there. He invited him to come up and sing this song with Muddy Waters or whoever it was, or Leadbelly, or one of those awesome black singers. And man, it was unbelievable. And it was just all spontaneous. They were kind of singing together, doing a duet. And that was fantastic. But my favorite of all was James Brown. Please, Please, Please. Have you seen that one?
James
Rhonda?
Brown movie? Uh-uh.
Well, it's not a movie. It's a YouTube video, but he sang that. That was his classic song. Please, please, please. He pours so much into it, and I just discovered that. I mean, he's long been dead, but that turns me on so much. It's just mind blowing. I think it's the greatest performance in human history. The
Cool.
People who have seen him that know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He was a singer, but a performer, a dancer, and kind of doing this kind of acting.
When you're home alone and you're not working, what kind of music are you listening to?
Well, I don't do it as much as I used to. I had a fantastic stereo system when we lived in Philadelphia, and we had all the songs of the 60s and a beautiful stereo system to listen to it. And there were, I don't remember the names of all of the ones, but there were some that I just blew my mind. There were so many. That that there's a kind of a jazz piece, Last Train Home,
Mm.
used to bring tears to my eyes, and then the one about my parents can't stand him because he's rides the rodeo. Do you know that song?
No.
Oh,
Or
it's Linda Ronstadt, something like that, and then there's a really beautiful thing I love. Tom Waits, and he has a song, "Never Let Go of Your Hand," and man, that is so beautiful to me. That song. He's kind of a hustler who's kind of screwed some woman, and now she's getting rid of him, and now he's kind of begging her not to leave, and you know, give me one more throw, give me one more try, type of
mm.
thing. It's really beautiful.
Do you like Linda
And then I
Ronstadt?
used to kind of get, just put on, this sounds so wimpy and silly, but the old Ricky Nelson songs like Travelin' Man and things like that. I'd turn on them real loud, just kind of dance around the house in my own lame way of dancing. Uh, but he was amazing because when I was growing up, I saw him as a kid on TV on this family sitcom, and then as he became a teenager, he turned into this heartthrob, beautiful looking man, singing these love songs, and it was I really loved several of those as well. But there are just so many. I'd have to look them all up and all the names of the songs and the people I loved. I think the greatest thing in the world, though, by way of music, on that you can also get on YouTube, is look up the Christian the Lion, and it's the let's see, there was that great woman singer who was in a movie with a bodyguard.
Oh, Whitney Houston.
Yeah, Whitney Houston. And what's her favorite song? Or I mean, the one that she belts out, her classic. It's "I Will Always Love You" or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yes, that's one of
And
them.
and
Yes.
that's up to the story of this couple, these two guys who saw a lion being sold in a department store in London and felt really sorry for it, uh, being in that little baby lion in a cage where it could barely move. And they bought it, and they took it home to their apartment, and just fell in love with it. And the lion fell in love with them. And but it started growing really fast. And then a church next door had a big kind of area, and they said that the lion could play there, and then they would go there and play, and they would drive around London in their car with the lion in the car. And then eventually, the lion got pretty adult, and was essentially impossible to keep him in downtown London as a pet, and they had to send him to this place in Africa. They heard, where kind of a place where they protect lions, like a big preserve,
Mhm.
and they said that. That was the proper thing to do, that so he could have a life of his own, and find another a lady lion, and do his thing, and so they brought him there, and they were so sad when they had to let him go and let him out of the cage, and he ran off into the wilderness there to who knows what. And then about a year or two later, they said, well, why don't we make another trip and maybe we can find him and see if he still remembers us. And then people caution them that he's become wild now and he won't remember you, and he's a dangerous predator now, and what you're doing would be, very dangerous, and you'll be disappointed. And but they decided to go and try to find him, and the fellow who ran the preserve. I mean, this is like tens of thousands of acres or square miles of African jungle. But they went shouting for him, and all of a sudden they saw a lion on a cliff, and they shouted to it, thinking it might be Christian, and the lion started coming at them. It started from about maybe a quarter mile away or something like that. And as he got closer, they could see it was Christian, and it ran up to them, and it hugged them. It got up on its rear feet and hugged them and started licking them. And I sob every time I see that. It's the most beautiful love story you can imagine. And then they say that the lion introduced them to his wife. It was a wild lion that he was married to, or mating with, and they had babies, and then they were able to go up and sleep with the lion and his wife and their babies, and just hang out. It's the most beautiful thing on the internet, and then it's that song "I Will Always Love You" in the background. I mean, it's almost overwhelming. It's so beautiful.
Well, this was one of the questions I was going to ask you, if there was a movie that you recommend to people. So it sounds like there's this YouTube video, and it's called Christian the Lion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there's many versions of it, longer versions and shorter versions, and with some, it's so inspiring. A lot of people have, edited it in various ways. It's old video because it was like, 30 years ago when all of this happened, and the video and everything wasn't as obviously as good in those days, but it's absolutely magnificent.
Oh, great! I'm going to go
And
down.
you'll that if you see that, I mean, there's like little 5-minute versions of it, and if you get the one with that "I Will Always Love You" in the background, it'll probably bring tear to your eyes too,
Yeah.
tears to your eyes. They just show like this is an animal, a lion, showing us what love is. I appreciate your putting together this wonderful list of questions, and I hope people had a little bit of fun with it. It's I'm very humbled and and honored to be in this position of answering these kinds of questions, and for someone to express an interest in me means a lot, because I spend my life being interested in others, and the problems people have, and seeing them as they really are. And that's been a huge, wonderful experience and gift for me. But it isn't often, the other side of the coin here. So I really appreciate that. And thank you, Stan.
Thank you, David, for your candor and sharing yourself with all of your listeners. Thank you so much. And next week, we're going to have another Ask David, but these will be questions about psychology and TEAM-CBT and life. See you next time.